Hi, good morning, AJ. How's your combine experience so far?
Very good. We're probably in the middle of it all, and it's a great time of year when we come down here and evaluate the players and have our meetings over there in the dome. It's the first time really that the coaches are exposed to some of the players that we really like a little bit.
Now, I'm going to guess that every year you're going to say this draft is the most important draft, but when you have the number of unrestricted free agents this year, like 20 or so,
Right.
how important is this one, especially with 5 picks in the top 89?
It adds more emphasis. There's no question because of the draft picks that we have. But again, we don't know how the draft will unfold. Meaning we could execute the 5 picks that we have, or it could be a lot of ammunition. You could go up, you could package down and go down. So you never really know until the very end. But let's say for conversation's sake that we stay where we are. Well, we know there's a 1, 2 2s, and 2 3s. We think it's a terrific draft. There's a couple of positions we're looking at. The depth is outstanding where we're focusing right now. So if we stood right where we are and didn't entertain any offers up and down, we think we could get some outstanding young men in the top 3 rounds.
Now, you talked about depth at certain positions, and one position I keep hearing is D-line at defensive end and linebacker, and that seems to be a need that there definitely needs to be an upgrade. How do you like this class?
Well, I don't know that has to be an upgrade. I hear it. A lot of people have opinions on what should be an upgrade, but it is very deep. I agree with that. And offensive line, I think, is kind of deep right now. I don't have a full study on it. I know that people have an opinion on what's deep and what's not deep each and every year. But I will say I'm very impressed with the defensive linemen and offensive linemen as far as good players, quality players on the upper end of the first part of the draft.
Would you take an O-line in the first round? Have you done that before in your previous drafts?
I have nothing against taking any position at any time, depending on what we need and what the player is and what the consensus is of the staff and how we feel about it. But really, again, the draft is wide open. We're not interested in a punter or a kicker. But after that, every position is wide open.
I'm guessing
Wide open as far as depth, or who could be first, second, third, develop for the future. That's how we approach it.
quarterback seems to be pretty good too, at least for your starting quarterback. Here's a Darren question. What are the merits now of keeping those 5 picks, first 89, rather than trading up? You're a guy, you've never been afraid to trade up in the past.
Well, no, I'm not afraid to do what's best, what I feel is best for the organization. Some people are locked in and they get conservative. I guess it's a conservative approach, but you've got to take some chances sometimes to be great. Jimmy Johnson once told me that from the Dallas Cowboys. Or you can play it safe, and that's a good thing too. But the fact that there are 5 picks, and it's been kind of calculated and designated by us to see if we could do that with the uncertainty of what we're facing and a long list of unrestricted. So there's a little bit of design where there's a 1, 2 2s, and 2 3s. We'll see how it all unfolds. But Marty, we're excited to have that many picks in the first 3. There's no question about that.
Can you recall a season where you've had to fill so many different needs though?
I don't go back and analyze since 2003. I might do that a little bit later. I just focus on our football team 1 year at a time. What can we do to get better in 11? The fact that we're talking so much about the 5 young men that could come in there, 1, 2, and 3, and some other draft picks that we have. Lots of uncertainty as far as unrestricted or restricted. Which way is that going to go? Whatever happens, happens, and we feel very prepared with a plan A and a plan B, depending on what the system is. Whatever the system is, when we get a phone call one day, we'll execute it. Right now, we're focused on the draft.
Now, your drafts, you're always going to be scrutinized. If you don't win the whole thing, everything's up for scrutiny. Especially some of the recent draft class. I think maybe Antoine Cason in recent memory, he seems to be the one guy that stepped it up as #1 pick. Do you feel as though you've gotten enough production, have you taken enough impact guys over the past few years?
Well, I think if I back up to the first part, I'm aware of, once you start out and have what people may consider outstanding, impactful drafts,
okay,
and there's all kinds of Pro Bowlers, and then it starts to level off and there's no impact players, so to speak, right away, or no Pro Bowlers, that you're dipped and you're bottoming out. The way I look at it is just keep moving forward. Obviously, if you're hitting impact players in the beginning and 11, 12 Pro Bowlers, and they're not there anymore, I guess you could say the arrow's going down, never to return. I don't believe in that. I just believe in, you're not going, for an example, Marty, if I got hired in 2003, my attitude is to try to do the best job that I can for as long as I'm able to do that. Full well knowing you're not going to be 100% in everything you do, but you're certainly not going to win a division championship each and every year that you're GM. And I don't think you're going to have a world championship at the end of that each and every year. There are going to be dips, bumps in the road. Keep focused. If you believe in what you're doing, you believe in the people around you, you just keep getting at it each and every year. I don't know any other way to look at it or approach it.
Okay. As far as your couple of your recent number one picks, and Kason, of course, he seemed to have a really good year last year. Larry English, there seems to be a huge question mark. How important is this upcoming year going to be for Larry English and his future with the team?
It's always important for any of your players to do well, stay healthy, help your football team win. There is no question. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer than others. Sometimes injuries can set you back. You have no control over injuries, but they can really set you back. Either you're on injured reserve or you're having surgeries and you're trying to make your way back. You just keep moving. You hope that at the end of your draft class, somewhere along the line, you have contributed to the San Diego Chargers as a whole team. Not everyone comes in, hits the field, plays outstanding. Not everyone starts. Not everyone heads to Honolulu. Sometimes along the way, there's an adjustment period.
Now, I think last season there seemed to be some surprise that you traded up to grab Ryan Matthews, and it seems as though you were enamored with Ryan Matthews from the start. You don't normally tip your hand, but we read reports of going to his pro day and spending time with him. Do you still is that confident level? Are you still confident that Ryan Matthews is going to be what you thought he was going to be when you took him at 12?
I think he's an immensely talented young man, character, and all those other things that go with it. I think his talent is immense. I believe he can help the San Diego Chargers win, and that's the purpose that we brought him in here. Now, when they cross over from college to the pros, it's entirely up to them. We are judged on how well they do as personnel men. If they do great and go to Honolulu, you're a very smart man. And if they don't, well, we know what people say about you.
All right.
I just think he's going to help us. We'll see.
Okay. Now I want to ask you about this combine. Now, you have all the regular tests, the interview process, and whatnot. How much importance do you put on the interview process that you go through with these players?
The most important thing that I look at in the combine is the physicals. Always has been, always will be. All of the medical teams are here, doctors, trainers. Very, very important. It's a violent physical game. They play in high school and college for the most part. We want to make sure that the people we're looking at are healthy and have an upside as far as their physical abilities and be able to hold up. After that, it's putting the little pieces to the puzzle of all the different things that we have along the way. The only thing that really matters is what kind of players they are. They're pretty good players because they've been invited here. But as far as the interview process, I'm a little all over the place on that over the last 4 or 5 years. We have handed our interview process over mostly to the coaches.
Okay.
So we can get in there in a brief amount of period of time, football-wise.
So that's going to be Nora, that's going to be Mineski, that's going to be position coaches.
Scouts are there, a
Okay.
couple questions. But in 15 minutes, Marty, it's kind of like get in their heads a little bit quick on X's and O's and things of that nature.
How about intelligence? How about common sense? How about the Wonderlic test? Love that one.
Well, the Wonderlic test has been controlled somewhat in the last couple of years, where I think it's a little bit more valid. We have a standard test. Before, they used to loosely be floating all around the country, so to speak, and people could get briefed on that, which put a little bit of doubt. You do a lot of research on that, and you visit with the young man. You might bring him into the complex, high school, college research. You get a feel for a guy, some intelligence. You do the best you can in your research before you bring him in.
Is what a player does or how they perform tests and whatnot, is that more important here at the Combine, or is it more about the Senior Bowl and what you see when you watch game film?
Game film's number one.
Okay.
Medical here at the Combine, number two. Everything else that we look at, we fit in to get a complete picture.
Okay, now you mentioned other than kicker and punter, every position's open. D-line seems to be deep. Has anyone stood out to you so far? Will you give specifics or names? No. I didn't think so. I'm going to try.
You would like to have me give you the impressive players that I've looked at?
I would like you to talk specifically about Cam Jordan, who I find very, very impressive. And I know you pay vivid attention to mock drafts and all the mock drafts that have come into San Diego, but
yes.
that's one guy to me that's been very impressive. I'm talking about, he reminds me of Clay Matthews from a couple of years ago. Has that it factor? Has the NFL pedigree? How much does any of that matter?
Well, it all matters. Again, it's all comes together until it's decision time, and it's certainly not decision time yet. They're good football players that are here at all different levels. I mean, this is the cream of the crop, so to speak. Are there some fine football players that did not get invited here like anything else? Yes, just like the draft, when they're free agents that end up being signed and go to Honolulu. How in the world does that happen? It happens, but for the most part, trying to give you, I don't like to get into particulars of who's jumping out at me, who I like, and things of that nature. I'm looking at a lot of players here, and we're having lots of meetings on scouts with the coaches.
Can you define what is an A.J. Smith type player? What do you look for in a player?
Someone who's extremely talented, coming out of college might be the finished product, or could be a young man that has a complete upside that we think is going to be extremely talented, has all the physical tools. And then after that, what kind of person is he? What kind of character does he bring with him? Work ethic, things of that nature. We get that research from high school and college because I believe, for the most part, high percentage. If you're a pretty good guy in high school and college, the odds of you turning when you get into the National Football League, a lot of them don't do that. However, if you do go down some wrong roads when you cross over, hang with the wrong crowd, maybe get your money and not handle it well, lose your focus on football, start running around at night and going different places rather than doing what you're supposed to do, we will not waste a whole lot of time with that particular player. We will not do it immediately. It's like family. You talk to people, you work your way through some things, you give guys opportunity. It's not done overnight, but eventually if they don't get it the charge your way, we're very disappointed and we move on.
But you're stuck with your family. You can't get rid of them if they disappoint you or they make mistakes. These players, at least you can.
Well, when you hear family, you're talking about family atmosphere.
Okay.
You just try to come together and unite as one, and your morning, noon, and night for the most part. And sometimes over a period of years, people stay with you. But I think there comes a time in professional sports, we all know what we're involved in here, and you just either draw the line in the sand and get it, or you don't.
You brought up character guys, and that actually seems to be the theme of this year's of this draft. At least for the media perspective, you have guys like Cam Newton, Ryan Mallett, and even yesterday the guy that stood out to me, who I thought did a great job being very candid, was Robert Quinn, who didn't play last year. He was suspended, and he's had some issues. But he seems to, would a guy like that, would you be wary of someone like that who's made pretty big mistakes, or no, or do you?
Well, I'm wary of anyone that's has had a history, but we work our way through those things. We've given some opportunities to people. Not everyone's perfect in every way. You give opportunities to guys, but you got to feel comfortable about it in your research. But I noticed in the last 3 or 4 years, character is used a lot in the media. It is used a lot in the combines. We've always emphasized that, but it's grown over the years. You are absolutely right. I mean, that's all I ever hear about is like the evaluation part and then the character and off the field part, a little bit more in the media in the last 3 or 4 years. The reason it's so much importance is because the amount of money and investment and time that you're going to put into this young man, you want to make sure that he appreciates the opportunity and he's going to focus on football. If there are indications that he might not, that is why we are talking about the things that we talk about. That's why I've told you that I think if you do your research, and they're pretty solid human beings along the way in high school and college, well, why would they turn completely the opposite direction as professionals? Well, there are a few reasons why that they may turn. And I think I've talked about the focus and the money and things of that nature, hanging with the wrong crowd, thinking you're pretty important, you're a pro football player, and you're going to be a pro for the next 20 years. We keep track of those kinds of things and stay on top of it. That's why I say you're charging 1 year at a time. And if you start to veer off, we will give you an opportunity to come on back in line. We're just kids. But if you start going down roads and nod and say, yes, sir, I understand, and never change, probably not going to be with us very long.
Last thing I'll ask you in the combine then is, who is going to make the ultimate decision? Is that you? How much input does Norv have into who you take ultimately?
Norv has tremendous input into this. Our scouts and our directors do. We ask the coordinators and coaches to jump in. This is the first time, by the way, that they kind of cross over and get a feel on the college level of who we like and why we like them, and then they give an opinion. And we have tremendous readings in the draft, but all of that ultimately comes down to my decision. Someone has to make recommendations. It goes with the job. I didn't make it up. Dean Spanos wanted me to do this. It's what he wants for his general manager. And I make recommendations to Dean about what direction we're going to go and what the players are and why.
Okay, now I want to ask you about Vincent Jackson, and I do realize that you cannot talk about CBA issues because, well, you guys pretty much can't. So, assuming this holds up, and there's a franchise tag. And first of all, why did you tag? Why Vincent Jackson?
Well, first of all, we need to back up here. Vincent Jackson's a pretty good football player. We think he can help us win. Mm-hmm. And going back a year with the system that we have and the uncertainty, we decided that we were going to tender him $3.2 million, which was the highest tender available, according to the system of the National Football, the rules of the National Football League that were for our disposal. And we thought it was a good thing to do. We know where that went, not very far. The system right now allows us to, Vincent is now an unrestricted free agent. So we, within the system at this point in time, from what I'm told, had an opportunity to franchise a player. We decided to franchise Vincent, which means, until we have clarification, that he will be a Charger for this particular year. Now that tag, within the system, is around $10 million, depending on what we hear exactly what it is. So we're operating within a system on an individual player that we think can help us win. I think the amount of money that goes with the franchise tag tells you what we think about his abilities pretty clearly. Backing it up last year, I know there was some debate about what his value was. According to the system, 3.2 is a number that we could use for Vincent, and not only Vincent, some other players. So we're operating within a system. I feel very comfortable with handling that way by rules and regulations that are for us and everyone else in the National Football League.
So you don't find it a risk to pay him because there are questions about character and off-field behavior. You don't find it a risk to go ahead and invest that type of money in Vincent for the season?
Well, obviously, Marty, the way to answer that is if we franchise tagged him, then that tells you clearly that that's the value we felt for him this particular year. We're very comfortable with it. That's within the system, and you have an opportunity to give the franchise to one particular player, and that player was Vincent Jackson. So I think that tells everybody that the value we think fit him. And we're comfortable with it for this year. Now, the reaction of that, it might not be valid. We have to wait and see. What will his reaction be with his agents? I have no idea. But whenever we hear what the reaction is, we will move forward from there.
Any chance of a long-term deal, or is that just something you'll evaluate later? You're not going to get into it during the season?
Yeah, I mean, I not at this point in time. There's no opportunity because we're very comfortable for this year at the franchise tag, and at the end of this particular year, like we do since I've been here, we'll wait, evaluate all of our players, start building a team for 12, and go from there. But I can honestly say that we have no intentions of a long-term contract at any time this particular year.
Okay.
Have no problem saying that.
I appreciate all your time, and gosh, last thing I'll ask you is, what am I going to ask you? I had a good question. I got to edit this out now.
You are never for a loss for words.
No, I am.
What are you talking about? You don't remember?
I've only had 2 cups of coffee. I'm at a loss of words, and it's early. This isn't normally my time. Oh yes. Okay. Well, with the CBA expiring next week, do you have any plans to go ahead and sign any of your current players to a long-term deal, like a team-friendly or team-player deal? I'm not whether it's a guy like a Billy Volek or some of your guys. Any plans to do that?
Well, anything like that, I'd never reveal to you right now. If we have any signings at all about any of our players prior to the 4th, you would probably be one of the first ones to know.
I am so glad you ended with that line. It's my favorite. Well, thank you very much, AJ. I appreciate it.